What's happening, podcast listeners? Welcome in. This is yet another episode of the Practice Squad podcast. It's been a wild week in sports, and I am super excited to sit down with Storm here to talk through some of the stuff. We had exciting divisional NFL playoff matchups. We had a great college football championship, and we've got a bit of a scandal on our hands in the MLB. But first,
Bill Belichick down there in Houston or what?
I'm not sure. So before we get started, Storm, how are you? Don't want to be rude.
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am excellent.
Good to hear.
That was nice. I'm glad we took the time to do that. Let's stick to what we do
Short
best.
and sweet today.
And just start talking some sports. So we are going to open with this scandal that is going on down in Houston. You've all, I'm sure, heard it by now if you follow sports even a little bit. I'm talking about the Astros cheating scandal where they were caught. Let's count the things. They were filming the opposing team's signs, then transmitting that to a video feed behind the dugout, and then banging trash cans to send that signal. And now possibly we have a vibration device on Jose Altuve giving him signs.
And Bergman.
Mid-game, and Bergman apparently. Still alleged, though.
Alleged.
No proof about that yet. But really, I know that's a lot. But Storm, what do you make of all of this?
This is just, I mean, every day you look at what's happening, it gets more and more wild. Like today, Beltran stepped down from the Mets as manager because of his thing. And you had, there's some rumors with the Yankees cheating as well now. Like, this is not only Houston. It impacted Boston, it's impacting the Mets, and now it's impacting the Yankees. So it's just traveling all over the place. But this new stuff with the buzzer is pretty wild because as soon as that came out, people started coming up as soon as Altuve hit that walk-off against Chapman, he's like, don't pull off my shirt, don't pull off my shirt.
Yeah, and did you hear when he was approached about it then post-game?
His wife, he was shy, and his wife would be mad.
And my wife got mad at him, and he pulled the typical 11-year-old caught in a lie. You get asked a question, you go, what?
Yeah,
you give yourself that extra 3 seconds
and then
to
he
think
ran
about it.
straight to the locker room and came back out. So there's definitely some fishy stuff going on there. But
oh, yeah.
I mean, there's such a double standard in the MLB, though, when it comes to cheating, because who's one of the faces of baseball in the commentary booth right now? Alex Rodriguez.
Fair.
Who's one that's been known for cheating a lot?
Yeah,
Alex
baseball,
Rodriguez.
Kind of historically, they've had a bunch of these scandals with obviously steroids, corked bats,
baseball.
pine tar.
Yeah, they got it all going
people
on.
People within baseball have always been a little loosey-goosey with the rules.
Right.
Like,
if you ain't cheating,
you
ain't trying.
If you can find a new way to cheat until you get caught.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, when you look at it, like, these suspensions with the stuff that are coming out, I don't think it's going to be enough. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's my next question. Yeah. Do you think, because the suspensions really, you had Jeff Lunho, the GM, and A.J. Hinch, the manager of the Astros, both got suspended for a year and fired.
Right.
The Astros got a $5 million fine. They lost their first and second round picks for 2020 and 21. And then obviously you had Alex Cora, who was kind of forced to part ways with the Red Sox. Now Carlos Beltran. Do you think that the consequences have been enough, considering how deep this scandal went?
Well, I don't know if MLB really knows even about the buzzers at this point. If that's real, every one of those, Lunhow, Hinch, and Cora should be suspended for life. I don't think they should be allowed. I don't think they should be allowed in baseball.
Out for life for gambling as a manager.
That was my next point. Yes,
this was a cooperative and multifaceted effort to use technology, set up infrastructure to cheat, and from the managers down to the players, the entire organization was aware of this.
Right.
Like, this is a big deal.
Yeah, and you see it, like, you look at the stats. Altuve, for instance, you look at his home and away stats that postseason, it's night and day.
Oh, yeah.
He's hit over 400 home and under 200 on the road.
Yeah, and I was reading something, like, allegedly, this could go back as far as, like, 2014. And you look at that year, I think Altuve's batting average jumped like 60 points in a year.
He's a three-time hitting champ, right?
And he hasn't hit under 300 since then.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not necessarily saying it was that, but hearing all this, it puts an asterisk next to it.
So now you look like, apparently if the baseball players cooperated, they were given immunity, basically. But how much did the baseball players say? How far did they really go? Did they say, we smacked some trash cans?
Why should they get immunity? Like, all these players were involved in this scandal knowingly. And it wasn't just like, someone's stealing signs and feeding to us. You have to know that there is a video feed right behind the dugout.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, people try to steal signs all the time. Yeah, like, I don't know if this is true, but someone said there was a kid just listening to the tape and he heard the banging, and that's what brought up this whole investigation. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I heard.
No, it was apparently wasn't it Mike Fears who was the whistleblower? He no longer plays for them. I forget.
But that was after the fact, right? I thought there was like some.
Okay, yeah, I'm not 100% sure of the timeline.
But then you even had like Logan Morrison come in, who I believe is a pitcher. I don't know the position off the top of my head, but he said like, yeah, it might be the Astros, but I can tell you firsthand, the Dodgers cheat. The Yankees cheat. Like, he's
and you
coming
wonder
out
how much, because the Red Sox won a World Series after Alex Cora went there. And he was allegedly like very involved in bringing this to be in Houston.
That's why my strongest person that should be suspended for life is Cora, because it started in Houston and now it went to Boston. Like, that's two teams. Obviously, he seems to be the head honcho between the whole scheme. So, yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I'm just interested to see. Obviously, there's going to be more developments. I'm sure this won't be the last time we're talking about it, but I want to know really how much more intricate this is. If there was the buzzer, obviously, were there other players who were wearing it?
Right.
What other technology were they using? And I really am interested as to whether or not Major League Baseball will make the punishments more severe for the guys, because I do think a year for this is kind of a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that big. Like, at first when it was just what it was, I was like, yeah, a year might be okay.
Yeah, you just see someone with the camera
and
someone's like yelling out to the dugout. It's like, all right, well, how does that get to the hitter in time, yada, yada. But now shit's going deep, man.
Yeah, it keeps getting deeper and deeper every week. So, yeah, I do think it should be more we should get more coming along the lines here.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm excited to see what gets revealed in the next week or so. Anyway, moving on, something that's kind of been getting overshadowed with this Astros scandal was LSU's capping off of a near perfect season by beating the Clemson Tigers in the national championship, 42-25. Joe Burrow had a hell of a night, threw for 463 yards, had 5 total touchdowns, 4 through the air, 1 on the ground.
And a big old fat stogie at the end of the night.
Was not the only one with the fat stogie. We'll circle back to that. It's not on the schedule, but I'm curious. But anyway, let's talk about the game first. LSU fell behind 17-7 pretty early on in the game, and it looks like Clemson had them kind of where they wanted them. How was LSU able to turn it around and then just put on an incredible performance for the rest of the game?
I think LSU definitely had the first-time jitters there. I mean, they haven't been in that spot in a long time. And Clemson's been there, 3 of the last 4 years? I guess they're 4 of the last 4. They've won.
No, it's
2
4 of the last 5.
4 of the last 5.
Yes.
Okay. But to me, as what we expected, LSU came to what we expected them to be after a slow start. Clemson was the head scratcher there. You look at Trevor Lawrence and Clemson, they were horrible on third down. They were 1 for 11. Lawrence was 2 for 10, 0 TDs, 1 sack, a QBR of 1.5. And then the 11 plays they had on third down, they have 10 total yards. So that's the game breaker for me. If you're not extending drives, I mean, obviously they did. They moved the ball at will at points. But when you stall 10 times like that, you're going to lose.
Absolutely. So I want to first start off by talking about what LSU did right to win this game. So offensively, as we mentioned, they did start slow. They only had 17 yards on their first 3 possessions. But boy, did they kick it into gear after that. So let's start. One of the wins for LSU was that they won the wide receiver on cornerback matchups.
Oh, yeah.
Like, first thing I noticed while I was watching the first quarter is these slants are wide open all day. Well, and that's the second thing. Jamar Chase got deep on A.J. Terrell all game long. I think it was like 6 catches for like 200 some, like 220 some yards.
And it was right after Jefferson went off against Oklahoma.
Absolutely, and they shut down Jefferson pretty well early on in the game. But like I said, I felt like they were allowing the slants because they didn't want to get burned deep. And then Jamar Chase got them deep all night long. And then Joe Burrow just was flat out better than Trevor Lawrence.
Oh, yeah. No question.
He was taking more chances down the field. He was more accurate. He looked more composed in the pocket, like he was throwing from a balanced center of gravity. Just head and shoulders better than Trevor Lawrence. I was not expecting about that.
If you look at some of his throws, when they were midair, that guy looked completely covered on some of those deep routes. And then all of a sudden, they're like catching the ball and taking off. I was like, he was
dropping it in the pocket. Like,
open.
Even the first touchdown he threw to the running back, he just put it right on his head. He didn't put it over. He put it right in the breadbasket and just
placement.
walked into the end zone. So even a throw like that looks like it should be routine, he did it in the absolute best possible way. But anyway, let's move to Clemson now, because the first thing, is I absolutely hated their game plan. What did I say last Thursday when we were doing a show? Who the star of the show needed to be for Clemson?
Your boy Etienne.
Travis Etienne. And you know what happened? They did not have enough Etienne in their game plan. So this is a dude that averaged 8 yards a carry on the season. Freaking stud. He gets 4 carries on the first 3 drives. Trevor Lawrence is throwing a bunch, and they had one other rush to a running back. He only had 15 carries on the game. And it's a bummer that they weren't able to establish drives early and establish the run because their defense and special teams put them in a great position early on. Their defense was getting stops, and their punter pinned LSU back deep twice. So Clemson, I believe, had great field position on 3 of their first 4 drives and only came away with 1 touchdown in that sequence. Absolutely unacceptable because, as you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence just did not look good at all. And I will give credit to the LSU defensive backs, but man, that ball was coming out high. It was coming out inaccurate. He was throwing off of his back foot.
Might be. I mean, those were a lot of the early season issues that he was having, they came back, and it was like, wow, you haven't seen it from him in the last 7-8 weeks, really, and then you saw it in that big game.
Yeah, so I just think Clemson had the wrong game plan coming into the game, and by the time that they would have been able to reroute and shift gears, LSU was already taking off.
Yeah.
So it was a bummer. I think Clemson, I wish they would have put up a bit more of a fight, and it would have been the best Clemson versus the best LSU, because we saw the best LSU. We did not see the best Clemson. Anyway, so
Joe.
As I mentioned, Joe Burrow absolutely went off, and that is par for the course that has been the 2019-2020 season for the LSU quarterback. So I want to know, is this the greatest season ever by a college football player?
In my lifetime, I would say yes. I'm pretty sure there's some, I tried to figure out how to stack it. It's really hard to compare, say someone like Joe Burrow to a player like Reggie Bush or, Jim Brown or someone like that. I have never
Jim
seen
Brown,
him play.
believe it or not, does not have fantastic college stats. I think the most he ever had in a season was like 900 yards.
Didn't they have him ranked as the best player in college football, though, ever?
They
whatever
did.
it
I
was?
saw someone actually post his stats next to Ron Dane's from that
really?
90s Nebraska.
Yeah.
Ron Dane had like over 2,000 yards in 3 of his 4 seasons in his Heisman. He had like 2,600 yards, then Jim Brown with 900. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, but you look at some of the things Joe Burrow did. I mean, you look at the 7 touchdowns and a half against Oklahoma, and then just over the season, he just crushed every SEC passing record. And he did break, the all-time touchdowns for a quarterback in NCAA. But, I mean, his SEC passing yards, he broke by like 1,500 or 1,200 or something like that. It's just so impressive. And I think a lot of people forget, like, it's not like he was some schlub coming out of high school.
No,
he was
not.
Mr. Ohio. He was a great recruit coming out. He just got stuck behind J.T. Barrett and Dwayne Haskins.
And also got injured during that stint as well.
So, I mean, he just did what you kind of expected him to do. And granted, he had a ton of talent. You had Tony Jefferson, you had Chase, and the running back, Heidel-Claire, is that his name? Something like that.
Edwards-Helaire, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, yeah, for me, I mean, I loved watching him play. He was a great time, and definitely one of the best I've seen.
Yeah, by the way, you mentioned it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, also a huge reason that LSU was able to win. He had a hell of a game. Wanted to make sure we at least mention him. But for me, I don't think Joe Burrow is the best college football player ever, but I do think this was the greatest season ever by a college football player. And you hit on a lot of the points. So the records, like you mentioned, most touchdown passes, 60 touchdown passes. That doesn't sound real. And he throws 4 in the national championship game, throws for 5,600 yards, which is 3rd all-time in college football, highest scoring offense of all time, highest all-time passer rating, most touchdowns and yards in a national championship game. And then you factor in the story of this guy. And like we were saying, it's not like it's a total underdog story. But this was a guy who had to transfer to get an opportunity to start. Now, granted, he transferred to an elite school, but you can't have the greatest season ever if you're not at an elite school. Anyway, he also linked up with a coach that wasn't accepted at USC, got fired by Ole Miss, and found his home in the South with LSU. So
go Tigers!
He was barely considered a draft prospect coming into this year. And then he has this absolutely ridiculous statistical career against an excellent schedule, and then he caps off his season with a 7-touchdown performance and a 7-touchdown performance and a half against Oklahoma, and a 5-touchdown performance in the national championship against the defending national champions. I don't understand how it can get greater than that in a season.
I have something. Hold on. I want to look up to see if I still have it. Here we go. LSU opponents won the ACC, the Big 12, the SEC East, the Orange Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, the Alamo Bowl, and the Texas Bowl. 7 were ranked in the top 10 when they played.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why this was such an impressive season by Burrow, but that leads me to my next question in terms of the entire team, because they did have such an impressive schedule, obviously go undefeated, all these records, win the national championship. Where do you think this LSU team ranks all time?
Again, I mean, you've seen some great Alabama teams, but I don't know. This team just went out and beat everybody. I mean, it was convincing, and everyone's like, I just don't think, the last couple of years of Alabama, their resume just doesn't seem as impressive with some of the opponents. Like, LSU wasn't that good when Bama went on their run. I mean, you had Auburn for a point of time. You had, trying to think, there was another, what's the other SEC school I'm thinking of that they were having some good battles with? Florida, I guess.
Yeah, and Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia, yeah. So, to me, again, it's probably a little biased because it's recent, but.
Oh, absolutely. And it really is tough for us to say. We've only seen so many college football teams and really paid attention. Like, I know I never really watched that 90s Nebraska team. I barely remember the U in 2000, 2001.
Exactly. That's so
USC
long ago.
is probably my first memory of like
I have
a dynasty.
USC with Leinart and Bush.
Yeah, and then you have the Alabama teams as well. But you can't argue that this is probably the most accomplished college football team ever.
Sure.
Like, you beat Texas, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Clemson. Like you said, 7 teams in the top 10. Absolutely ridiculous. May not be the best team, and I'm definitely not the first person to say this. I've heard it all over the place. Probably the team that has achieved the most in a single college football.
Yeah, I would agree there.
Yeah, great season for LSU. We congratulate you. Oh, and before we move on.
I was going to say, is this where you want to circle back to Stogies?
Yeah, Stogies. And we're going to talk about Odell Beckham Jr. a little bit later, but I'm assuming you saw the videos of the police officers in the LSU locker room after, Matt. What's your whole take on that?
Well, I was trying to look and try to see if there's, usually police officers in there. I guess there really aren't usually in the locker room unless something goes down. And I think the issue was, you're not supposed to smoke in buildings, right? And all those cigars were lit up. And then I don't know if he was trying to find someone drinking, but dude's being a hard ass. Like, these kids just won the national title. They just went on this crazy thing. You're not going to stop 50 players from smoking a cigar.
I agree. I thought it was kind of nonsense, and I don't know a ton about it. I've just seen the video. And like I said, we'll get more specifically into some of Odell Beckham Jr.'s actions, both on the field as well as in the locker room later during our NFL Rapid Fire. So make sure you hang on for that one, guys. Anyway, speaking of the NFL, we are going to transition our way on over there. I want to talk to you about that upset that the Tennessee Titans pulled on the Ravens. Now, not to toot my own horn, I did call it, but really it was just an impressive performance by the Titans and not what we have come to expect from the Baltimore Ravens this season. So, really, how was Tennessee able to pull off this upset, Storm?
I think rust had a little bit to do with it, right? But they kind of beat themselves at their own game. I mean, Derrick Henry, another monstrous game. They controlled the clock.
Yeah, another game over 180.
Yeah, 180. What was he at? 206 total or something? He was close to 200, I guess.
He's a monster. And with the passing touchdown.
With the passing, yeah, it's insane. Everything they did, I mean, it was just when you see the Titans, what they put up, 28 points?
Yeah, 28 points.
You would think Tannehill threw. I mean, he threw for another 88 yards for 2 touchdowns. So he was just managing the game and letting Derrick Henry do his thing. And that defense, man, they're
came
playing,
out of nowhere, man.
Yeah.
I did not see this defense stepping up
out
like
of
it
nowhere.
has.
Yeah, it's just impressive what they've been able to do, and they were able to just capitalize and control the clock and basically beat the Ravens at their own game.
Yeah, and it was really crucial for the Titans, and this is what everyone knew Baltimore could not let happen, and that is let Tennessee get the lead early. So the Titans' first 2 scores were on short field, so they had a 35-yard drive off that first turnover, that interception by Lamar, which I do think Russ contributed to a little bit. He threw Mark Andrews probably should have caught it, but Lamar did deliver it a little bit on the high side. So a little bit of rust there. And then they score on that one-play 45-yard bomb. I think it was a one-play drive after Baltimore had the turnover on downs. So from there, Baltimore was just totally off their game, and all the things that we had become accustomed to seeing them do on a regular basis just were not happening. Lamar was turning the ball over. They were not getting the fourth down conversions that they had gotten all season long. And then the Baltimore coaching staff just panicked a little bit. Lamar dropped back to pass over 70 times in that game.
Was it really?
Yeah, he threw 59 passes. And then dropped back and then either scrambled or took a sack or threw, or I guess throwaway would count. But over 70
Wow.
times. I think it was 71 times that he dropped back to pass. So, yeah, like you said, the Ravens just did not look sharp. And once they got out of their element, they scrambled. It was really, really weird. I was not expecting that. If Tennessee was going to beat them, I was expecting the defense to just make really, really impressive stops all game, which they did. But I wasn't expecting Lamar to have 3 turnovers. I wasn't expecting them to go 0 for 2 on 4th and 1, 0 for 4 on 4th down throughout the entire game. Yeah, and I wasn't expecting Derrick Henry to throw a passing touchdown either.
I mean, you look at what you had Carson Edwards run that 4th and 1, right? I think it was
Gus Edwards.
Gus Edwards, yeah, sorry. And it's like, dude, you have Ingram and you have Lamar.
Like, Lamar on that 4th and 1, he just misread it. He just tried to bounce it back inside when he
that's
just got to get that 1 yard.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of Lamar, obviously this game leaves a sour taste in his mouth considering how good of a season he had. But do you think this loss should take away from Lamar's MVP season as a whole?
I don't. But what pisses me off about what happened is Lamar's comments after the game when people are like, you're 0-2 in the playoffs now. He's like, I don't care what they say. This is my second season in the league. Bro, you cannot be talking all that smack all season long about, oh, not a running back, oh, a quarterback, how well he was playing, and then turn around in the playoffs and say, oh, it's only my second year in the league.
Yeah, I don't love that. It's not great.
You can't be. There's not one side or the other.
It's tough though because these players get asked these questions like minutes after a game. Like they barely have a chance to go out and take their jockstrap off before they're getting asked about it. And he's frustrated, and I get it. You want him to sit there and take one on the chin and say, you know what? Like, I didn't play well.
Right.
I want to come back stronger next season. But I'm not going to hold too much weight against him. He's still a 21, 22-year-old kid.
Yeah, I mean, things could change, but, I mean, you also have, at the same time, have seen second-year quarterbacks have success in the playoffs. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't think he would deny that he had an off game. Like I said, we'll see how he responds next year. I think he knows. He showed us from year 1 to year 2 that he was willing to put in the work to get better. I think from year 2 to 3, we'll also see similar strides. Maybe not quite as much, but I do think he has that good work ethic.
Do you think he wins a Super Bowl?
That's tough to say because really it's about can this offensive scheme win a Super Bowl? Because now it's been
now everyone has a full off season game plan against this scheme.
Yes, that's the big question. How long is Baltimore able to keep Greg Roman?
Right,
yeah.
And I know just recently Eagles have interest in the quarterbacks coaches for their OC
Absolutely,
as well,
yeah. So it's tough. The window is short in the NFL. But anyway, I basically agree with you. This does not take away from Lamar's year. He did have an incredible season.
No doubt.
36-6, had over 1,200 rushing yards, almost 7 yards a carry. Really just, I don't want to say a revolutionary season, but a season unlike we have ever seen from an NFL quarterback. I remember early on in the season we said that Lamar Jackson's ceiling was Mike Vick. I think he's already hit that. So he's got a ceiling that we haven't seen before, in my opinion. And who knows whether or not that's going to win Super Bowls, but damn, has it been a hell of a lot of fun to watch this season.
Yeah, you look, I mean, Mike Vick got to the NFC Championship. He never got to a Super Bowl.
No, he did not, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and what he was doing, he just came to the league and it was so different. But really what Lamar and this offense did this season has also just been a total game changer in the NFL. Anyway, guys, it's nearing the end of our first half of the show, and you know what time it is. It's time for some NFL rapid fire, guys.
Rapid fire!
That's right. We've got 9 NFL questions for you. Hope you enjoy. Let's dive right in, Storm. Question number 1. This one's a little close to home for you. So, quarterback Josh McCown, who came in late in the first quarter for the Philadelphia Eagles in their wild card playoff game, reportedly ripped his hamstring clear off the bone in the second quarter and continued to play until the end of the game. What's your reaction?
Absolute warrior, man. That's awesome. I mean, good for him. But then I have to say, why'd you try to run the ball on 4th down, man, when the game was right there?
The adrenaline was pumping, man.
I mean, you're already 40 years old. Now you got no hammy? Like, come on. But, yeah, I mean, incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he played well, too.
He did, man. And Warrior doesn't even begin to
Yeah.
describe, because I can't imagine the pain of just having your hamstring floating around there. And the dedication he had to his team, knowing that there is no one to back him up. He plays 2 quarters of football and puts them in a position to win. Never, and then here's the thing, he never mentioned it during that postgame. He didn't mention that his leg was sore, nothing. It just shows the importance of football to a lot of these players, and how much it means to them. And this is why football is so great. No one feels this way about any other sport.
Right.
No basketball player or baseball player is going to be out there with this kind of injury. It's just amazing the power that football has over.
Yeah, just really quick. I think he said, you know what? I'm not going to be playing football ever again. This is my first playoff game. This is going to be my last playoff game.
I'm not
going
coming
down.
out.
You have to carry me off the field.
And I know this is getting a little long, but I've seen some people post like, oh, I don't know why anyone would give up all this or play through that for a sport. But you know what? Like you said, he'd been in the league 17 seasons to get to play in a playoff game. He's probably dreamed about that since he started watching football, man. So good for you, Josh McCown. Respect the Warrior that you are. Anyway, moving on. Have the Texans reached their ceiling with Bill O'Brien?
Yep, time to go. He's terrible. I can't stand him.
Yeah, man.
I don't have much else to say.
He has had so many chances and has wasted and continues to waste elite talent. Deshaun Watson, D-Hop, J.J. Watt, loses Jadeveon Clowney, loses Tyrann Mathieu. And he's shown poor management and play calling in big games. Like I said, he botched the Clowney thing, let go of Mathieu. Tunsil move isn't working out. Time to go. He's no better than average at GM or coach, yet he still has both jobs. Makes no sense. All right, question number 3. How do you feel, Storm, about the Redskins waiting until after the draft to hire a general manager?
Yeah, it's kind of odd. It just seems like Riverboat Ron has control regardless, so whatever GM they hire, it's just going to be a mouthpiece.
It's a total Washington move. Doesn't surprise me. It makes no sense to me unless, like you said, they just plan on having Ron Rivera act as basically the general manager, in which case just announce that, because a GM by definition is in charge of player personnel. So why wouldn't you want them involved in picking the players that he's going to be general manager over? Like, it makes no sense. I'd be pissed off if I was a GM and I walked in and drafted, like, why the hell did you draft this guy?
Yeah.
This makes no sense. I've had total Washington move. All right, staying in the NFC East, should the Cowboys sign Amari Cooper to a long-term max deal?
Yeah, keep spending that money. I don't care. I went back and looked at his stats from this year, and he had 1,200 yards. He had 226 in one game, and then only 3 other games after that he had over 100 yards. So I mean, I don't know what Amari Cooper is. I mean, you look at the 2 biggest games of the season for them down the stretch. He had 19 yards versus your Rams and 24 yards versus the Eagles, showing up small. So I don't know, but pay the man.
I say no, and I'm speaking objectively, unlike some people, but I say no. And it's tough because on the surface, it seems like they should. He's got all the tangibles. He's like a great route runner, really got good hands. He's not a diva in the locker room. Yeah. But you nailed it. He's too inconsistent. He'll have a 190-yard game with 11 catches and follow that up with 2 for 14.
Right.
And he particularly seems to disappear in the big games for the teams that he played on. He did it for Oakland when he was there, although they played in a very limited amount of big games. And he's done it for Dallas in his short time there. And it's going to be a bummer for them, and they're probably going to pay him because they gave up a first-rounder for him.
Right.
But I don't think he's a top 10 receiver even. I'd
have to go back.
I don't know if I could do it right now, but I bet you I could think of at least. He's not D-Hop. He's not Julio. He's not Michael Thomas. He's not those guys. So, no, I wouldn't pay him, particularly when they should be a run-first team, and they also have some talented guys in Michael Gallup. Jarwin's an up-and-coming tight end. I say you move on. A player that has moved on based off their own choice is Luke Kuechly, formerly of the Carolina Panthers, who surprised everybody by deciding to retire this week.
Yeah.
So what's your reaction to that, man?
I was shocked, but when I thought about it for a minute, the first image of him that came to my head was him getting carted off after that one concussion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? It makes sense for him. I mean, he's had concussion issues. That man just plays at 150% every time. I mean, he's definitely a Hall of Famer in my opinion. Sad to see him go. Hell of a player. Absolutely.
I think everyone was shocked because you don't see this coming. But just like Andrew Luck, I can't knock him. Like you said, this is a guy who plays at 150%. He said I no longer feel like I can play the game as meant to be, hard and fast. I forget the verbatim quote.
Yeah,
but
his thing was pretty cool.
You get the gist of it.
Speech, yeah.
But this is a guy who has dealt with head trauma injuries and dealing with concussions and being aware of what kind of long-term effect that can have on him and his health. So I never knock someone for it, thinking about their long-term health. He has $60+ million in the bank. He can go do what he wants with that money, invest in it. He can retire on the beach if he wants to. Good for you, Luke Kuechly. I applaud you. Now, leading away from this now, obviously Andrew Luck had his early retirement. Luke Kuechly, there's also been others like Calvin Johnson, who is the guy with Gronk,
Patrick Willis.
Patrick Willis, yeah. So we are starting to see this more and more. Is this a trend that is going to continue to kind of pick up speed in the NFL?
I do think so, because you look, these second contracts that these players are earning are enough, obviously, again, by, like you just said, Luke has $60 million in the bank. He's fine. I think these players are getting smart enough and getting paid enough that they know, like, hey, I don't need to kill my body over this anymore. I could retire now at 28 and live the next 50 years of my life happy, healthy, with family, with friends, and do whatever I please. If I want to start a business or a car dealership or something, I could do whatever I want. So I do think it's going to continue.
I agree as well, and I don't think it's going to end up being a problem for the NFL.
No, I wouldn't say
I do
that,
think you
no.
are going to have people who are the elite players who play basically a Hall of Fame career like Kuechly in 7-8 years or so. They get that second contract, they play it out, and then they remove themselves from the game. And I'm all for it, honestly. It honestly puts the NFL in a better situation because 20, 30 years down the line, you don't continue to have as many of the health issues that are steering people away from watching football, getting their kids to play football, etc. But I don't think it will become a problem in terms of talent getting sucked from the NFL because, number one, we talked about with Josh McCown. These guys, most of the players love playing football, and they genuinely just want to play it as long as they can. And number two, a lot of these players still, it takes a while to make generational money. You're on $2-3 million contracts. You're not the superstar. So you're going to want to play into your mid-30s so you can make that extra $6-7 million, really set yourself and your family up.
Absolutely. So, and those guys that aren't making that kind of money are the ones that are not really playing as much either. You know
absolutely,
what I mean?
yeah. I think overall this kind of thing is a good thing for the NFL. Keeping with the Panthers, they recently just hired Joe Brady, what is he, like 17?
Yeah, dude.
Hired Joe Brady as offensive coordinator. Do you like this move?
It's incredible.
Panthers?
We were talking about this yesterday, I think it was. Joe Brady was the grad assistant at Penn State 5 years ago.
I know,
and now he's an offensive coordinator of an NFL team. That's really impressive. I like it. Matt Rule and Joe Brady should be a lot of fun. I mean, we'll see who they get at quarterback at some point.
That's the big thing for me. I can't be sure about how I feel until I know the quarterback situation. Like, obviously, Brady did an exceptional job as the OC at LSU, and he worked under Peyton with the Saints, but I'm not sure that style of offense fits Cam Newton. So I really think this is pointing to them trying to make a move in the draft and get a guy like Tua, who I think would fit at least the limited amount of information I know about Joe Brady's offense.
Or do you try tank for Lawrence next year?
See, I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like if you have Matt Rule and Joe Brady, you want to get this process going now. So that's just me. Who knows? They might, but are you guaranteed Lawrence? Are you?
No, you're not.
Like,
but you could have another Joe Burrow come out.
And I guess Justin Fields is also available next year. Who knows? Speaking of Trevor Lawrence, though, after seeing them match up in the college football championship, who will be the better NFL quarterback, Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow?
I have a really tough time with this. I have no idea. I think I have to wait to see who drafts Trevor Lawrence because I think it's really going to come down to the organization that the quarterback is in rather than the talent of the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And you look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati can't really find talent. They're not very good. They're not a very well-ran organization. They kept Marvin Lewis for 25,000 years. Like, I don't trust them enough, but I do trust Joe Burrow to at least make that team relevant.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Trevor Lawrence is going, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of money it won't be an organization as bad as the Bengals because there are very few.
Yes.
TJ Houshmandzadeh has said multiple times that Carson Palmer is the best thrower of the football he has ever played with, and that's including like just doing run-throughs and just playing catch with guys, and he's done that with a ton of great quarterback talents, and the Bengals were able to make him barely a playoff quarterback. But anyway, I've got to go with Trevor Lawrence, and I know Joe Burrow, everyone has the recency bias, and he has been fantastic, but he still is a middle-of-the-pack athletic talent with middle-of-the-pack arm strength. Played in a great system, and I think he can be a successful quarterback. But Trevor Lawrence, to me, it's kind of like the Carson Wentz versus Jared Goff argument. Jared Goff can perform really, really well in certain situations if everything's rolling with him. But Carson Wentz can put a team on his back if he really needs to, because he is a special talent. I think Trevor Lawrence is just a special physical talent. And although he had a bad game in the college football championship, I think long-term I'd be betting on that guy. All right, James is giving us a signal, probably the third or fourth time he's done this, so it's a good thing we are on to our last question of NFL Rapid Fire, which has not been muy rapido today. Last question. We mentioned it earlier. We're circling back to it. Should there be any consequences for OBJ after he handed out money to LSU players on the field after their win in the championship game, plus what he did in the locker room by smacking a cop on the ass as he reprimanded LSU players for smoking cigars?
And he interrupted Coach O's post-game speech in the locker room. Yes, that too. Asshole. OBJ, all about him. But regardless, listen, from my point of view, no consequence should be had for giving out money. From the NCAA's point of view, he should be banned for life from being on the LSU sideline.
That to me is a little steep, so I'm going to break
Look at what the LSU does, though. They're literally watching him give him money. The NCAA is a pile of heaping trash.
Yeah, and... Well, what about what he did in the locker room then? Should we? Because apparently there's an arrest warrant out for him.
Yeah, he should pay a fine. I mean, he slapped the cop's ass. It's pretty disrespectful. I know he was having fun and he was being an asshole, but there's no need for that.
So for me, in terms of the money on the field, he should get a fine and warn that he can't pull that shit again unless he wants to get banned for life. Like, I don't think it's a big deal. He handed out a couple $100 to some kids. The NCAA needs to get over itself.
That's the issue, though. That is the issue.
Like,
the NCAA suspended Chase Young
that
for
doesn't
2
mean
games.
That doesn't mean that I have to agree with their decisions.
No,
and shit
I know.
like
That's
that.
why I said from 2 point of views.
Yeah, no.
From my own personal
point of view, the NCAA just need to fuck off because this is not a big deal at all.
We're going to have to put a new rating on this podcast.
Now, granted, in the locker room, I agree, man. You can't do that. I don't care. And really what this comes down to, and I don't love any of this because this is Odell trying to bring attention to him when it should be on these guys.
Yeah.
If you're really concerned about just giving these guys some money to congratulate them, pull them to the side later and dap them up and give them some money. Don't do it on the field where everyone is looking at you, man.
I'm pretty sure he was wasted.
This is the worst look for Odell that I think I've ever seen. Out of all the shit that he's done, this is the most egocentric, and I hate it.
And I know James
Although I don't think there should be big penalties for handing out some cash.
Yeah, I know James yelling at us to move on, but like it's not
whatever. I'm fired up.
It's not even him that's looking good. He put a lot of people in bad places, like the players, the LSU itself.
And once again, I do think that's bullshit. Like the NCAA, if they suspend any of these players for that, like
I'm pretty sure they're all gone anyway. So
yeah, I mean,
but yeah, I agree. It's ridiculous. The NCAA is trash.
Oh, by the way, NCAA, while you're getting the stick out of your ass, change that targeting rule. That has gotten two key players
agree. Targeting one, targeting two.
Ejected out of semifinal and national championship game. It's an absolute disservice to the players. It's a disservice to the fans.
Disservice to the game itself.
Thank you. It's a disservice to football itself. You should be ashamed of yourself, NCAA.
I agree. 100,000%.
You suck. Anyway,
Me?
Now that I'm all fired up, let me talk about some beer. And this is...
Take a swig and calm down.
Let me take a sip. That Mon Monster by Rusty Rail Brewing Company sure is delicious. And guys, we're running through our beers again, so we have had this one before, but man, is it a good one. So as I mentioned, it does come from Rusty Rail Brewing in Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania. It's 8% ABV Imperial IPA. Really, really good. It's extremely similar to another beer they have that's called Fog Monster. So it's a hazy, unfiltered IPA that's got juicy fruit characteristics of Azacca, Eldorado, citric, and mosaic hops. A little bit of bitterness at the end, but not too much. Really dope. It's got like an iguana, kind of Godzilla-like, about to wreak havoc on a Van Gogh-style city in the backdrop. I dig it. Rusty Rail, shout out to you. Appreciate the Mon Monster.
Delicious.
Yeah, James and Storm are still making me drink alone, but that's all right. I know one day they will circle back and we will all enjoy cold brews together again. What I do know is that won't be in the second half, but stay tuned for that because we do still have a lot of great stuff. We're going to give previews of the 2 championship games going on in the NFL this weekend, as well as touch on that Chiefs comeback we saw and the Browns' recent coaching hiring. So stick around, guys.
Most recent.
Most recent hiring. Yeah, there have been a lot of recent ones. Good point, Storm. So stick around, guys. We'll be back to you after the theme music plays. Yes, camera is rolling. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. That reminds me of a great joke. I think I've told it to you guys, actually.
It's probably terrible then.
3, 2.
Terrible joke.
It's not a terrible joke. I'll tell it right now. So I was on one of the podcasting forums. It was interesting because I was trying to network with some guys, and I actually kind of started chatting with a Polish sound engineer, and then I met a Czech one too. Czech one too.
That is awful. That is so bad. At first, I thought you were going to say pole stripper. Pole dancer.
Your palate for jokes clearly isn't as sophisticated as mine, Storm.
Yeah, because that is just...
Your joke, for a joke to be funny for you, it has to include a stripping pole.
Nothing wrong with that.
Whatever. All right, let's talk sports, guys. Count us down again, James.
Oh, that's not going on the thing.
It's recorded. Yeah.
Bonus content.
3, 2.
And we're back for half number 2, Practice Squad podcast listeners. We're pumped to talk to you about all that we've got scheduled for half number 2. Unfortunately, we aren't starting off with bets. Storm has been a studying man. He's got some big exams coming up. You know, he handles money, trying to be a CPA, big shot and whatnot. It's going to leave us all in the dust behind, and then you'll just be stuck with me. But we respect you once again, just being honest with the listeners, not wanting to throw crap out to them.
Yeah, there's not much I even like this weekend, and like Saturday went well, and then I ended cold. Sunday I went cold, and Monday I was cold. So
Yeah, Monday was cold for both of us. Sunday wasn't great for me either. So you know what? Let's just let things chill off. We'll be back with you. At the very least, we expect you to have a way that you're placing money for Super Bowl
Oh,
Sunday.
yeah, we'll try to get into some
Maybe
prop
throw some
bets.
props in there, yeah.
For sure.
Coin
We'll have
toss
some
and whatnot.
Fun, yeah. We'll have some fun
Do you have
with
any
that.
inside information on the coin toss for the AFC Championship game this weekend?
I do not.
Heads or tails?
I would go
think
heads.
the line's at minus 105. You heard it here first, guys.
Give me heads.
Heads. It's a lock for the Kansas City game this weekend. Speaking of Kansas City, that's where we're going to shift our attention to start this second half of the show. They pulled off an absolutely absurd comeback against the Houston Texans after Houston came out roaring to a 24-0 lead. Kansas City went on a 51-7 run. They erased the lead in a quarter. How impressed were you with the Chiefs in this comeback victory, and how much blame do you put on the Texans for allowing it to happen?
Oh, well, Bill O'Brien's coach, and we already voiced our opinion
Yes,
about
we
him.
did. No need to harp on that
You don't
any
want to
longer.
go too far. And then the Chiefs, how about the message they put on the Jumbotron? They ran out of touchdown fireworks. That is just incredible. Like, it's awesome. I mean, you look at this team, and it was a typical Andy Reid start. Slow, coming off the break. You're like, here we go, Andy's
Yeah,
back.
it felt like it was going to be another one of those letdowns for
Yeah.
Andy Reid in the playoffs.
Right, and then all of a sudden, the Chiefs just rattled off 6 straight touchdown possessions. It's incredible. But you know what? It works both ways. That Chiefs defense settled in. They only allowed 10 points after the first quarter. all around they were playing well. Patrick Mahomes, he started looking like the little Patrick Mahomes you know of.
He looked like MVP Patrick Mahomes.
It was a little scary. That team just rolled. I mean, I feel like they were toying with them a little bit. Like, hey, take 24 points. And listen, 24 points is damn impressive. I was just so impressed with how easy they made it look.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was erased in a
Like,
quarter.
I didn't think Kansas City was out of it, down 24-0, but no part of me thought that it would be 28-24 at halftime.
Exactly.
It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in football. They didn't just make that up. They scored touchdowns on 7 consecutive possessions. Like, Houston Texans must forgot who the hell Patrick Mahomes was. I know he didn't throw 50 touchdowns this year, but the dude is still for real. And he and Travis Kelce just had a freaking field day. Travis Kelce, they were just playing pitch and catch like it was in the backyard. It looked way too easy. And, man, this Kansas City team, like I said it going into the weekend, they had too much talent, but Houston had them exactly where they wanted them. They got some great plays on special teams and on defense that allowed them to get out to a 24-point lead. And then Bill O'Brien happened with the 2 terrible fourth down calls. You kick a field goal on 4th and 1 when you have the momentum, and then you go for it with a fake punt when the momentum's leaning towards Kansas City and give them a short field. Then the muff punt, and it was game over.
DeAndre Carter, who hasn't muffed a punt all year, I
absolutely.
think.
And again, Kansas City muffed a punt too, so that kind of muffed a kick too, so that kind of evened itself out. But, man, Kansas City is just so talented, and I was expecting Deshaun Watson to be a little bit better as well.
Yeah, he didn't play that good.
No, he did not, and obviously a lot of the reason is the offensive line. He looked like he wasn't even hitting his back foot before he was scrambling to try and just find some breathing room. But I expected him to do a little bit more, keep them in the game. But you could have only expected so much because once that train gets going on Kansas City's offense, it is a bitch to try and stop.
It was similar to LSU in the championship game. The lead obviously wasn't the same. But
but it definitely reminded me
once you roll, you roll.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. Was just impressive.
It really, really was. Excited to see Kansas City in the AFC Championship, which we will talk about in just a few minutes.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red. Rooting for Andy Reid. Anyway, we're going to shift gears a little bit over to Kevin Stefanski, who was just hired by the Cleveland Browns to be, the 92nd head coach this decade, something like that?
10 coaches in 20 years.
Yeah, that organization is just so bad.
20 years.
But maybe things are different. No more Jimmy Haslam. Maybe John Dorsey is going to change things up a little bit.
Is he still there?
John Dorsey's the owner.
No, Haslam's the owner.
No, Haslam. Oh, I'm sorry.
Dorsey's the GM.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
gone.
Confused the two names. My bad, guys.
You're good.
But anyway,
just giving the listeners the best content here.
That's all we do. That's all we do here at the Practice Squad podcast. We don't make any mistakes until we do. Anyway, so you had mentioned 10 coaches in 20 years.
Yes.
So that's on average 2 years a head coach. Yes. So I want to know, as a betting man, Storm. The over-under is 2.5 years for Kevin Stefanski staying in Cleveland. What are you taking, the over or the under?
I think I'm going to listen. You want to go under, right? Play the odds because of the average.
Play the trend, you know.
Yeah, but I do think I'm going to go with the over here. My original thought was this was that Paul DePodesta.
DePodesta, yeah.
DePodesta, who I don't even know what really role he has in Cleveland right now. But this was
like
his.
The Jim. He's the guy. He's the Billy Bean guy from the.
He's the
from baseball.
Yeah. So this was his original hire, and I'm pretty sure I saw that he wrote like a letter to Haslam, basically pleading his case to hire Stefanski before they went ahead and hired Kitchens.
Oh yeah, they did that last year.
Yeah.
It was DePodesta's first choice.
Right, and then I'm looking at the rumors of who their staff might be, and I see Wade Phillips, your boy, and Gary Kubiak as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And if you surround yourself with coordinators like that, like Wade Phillips is never going to go to a head coach again. He's going to be
no, he's a defensive specialist.
I mean, Kubiak, probably the same thing, right? So they're probably going to stay coordinators. If you could surround yourself with a strong staff like that, I mean, there's a chance to recover a Baker Mayfield, maybe get OBJ if he's not in jail, which he won't be. I was just kidding. get them rolling, get that offense rolling, because Kubiak's a pretty good offensive mind, in my opinion. So, Stefanski, obviously,
Well, wasn't Kubiak kind of working alongside of Stefanski this past year in...
Oh, he was in Minnesota. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He was a head coaching offensive
Yeah, so I actually didn't know that he went along with him to Cleveland.
Well,
That's
it's the
huge.
rumor. It's
the rumor. Okay.
Yeah, that's the rumor mill right
Gotcha.
now.
Okay.
Those are the favorites from what.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I've
If he's able to get that staff, that's a big win for Stefanski and the Browns. So I'm actually with you here. I was hoping you'd go with the under so we could disagree. You're a guy who you always say the under. You always play the under. You know you're into gambling when you start betting unders all the time.
When you play an under 37, that's when you elite status.
Was really hoping you'd go that way, but we're going to have to agree here. I'm also going with the over. I really do like the move overall. So I know Stefanski doesn't have a huge track record as an offensive coordinator, but he's been a quarterback's coach. He's been a wide receivers coach. I think wide receivers coach. He's been a tight ends coach. It's either wide receiver or running back. But he has coached multiple positions on an NFL team, so he's kind of touched all aspects of the offense. And this year, what they did in Minnesota, I feel transfers really well to the talent that they have in Cleveland on offense. So we'll start with the running game. Obviously, you had Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. You go to Cleveland, you now have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I could argue that's better than Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison.
Yeah,
I think they will try to keep Kareem Hunt.
Sure.
I don't think he has a massive market right now for him. Additionally, Stefanski ran the zone run scheme in Minnesota, which does not require a ton of skill on the offensive line for run blocking. And Cleveland's biggest deficit offensively this year was their offensive line. Additionally, then, what that kind of game plan does is it opens up the play action. It limits quarterback mistakes because you're limiting how often the quarterback is just dropping back to pass without a play action or something like that, or throwing a screen, etc. So you're going from Kirk Cousins to Baker Mayfield. Like, unless we're saying that we don't think Baker Mayfield can be better than what Kirk Cousins has showed us we can be, I think it works. And then he's also working with similar wide receiver talent, going from Diggs and Thielen to now OBJ and Landry. Improvement there. So as long as he can keep that culture under wraps, and as long as the owner of as long as Jimmy Haslam stays out of the way, which it looks like he might not, because he said he wants to do Monday morning meetings with him after every game. I don't love that, but if those two things happen, if the young players at Cleveland can keep their heads on their shoulders and Haslam can stay out of it for a little bit, I think long term this could work. And I think Dee Podesta is thinking long-term. He's an analytics guy.
Yeah,
they don't do small sample sizes. He wants to see Stefanski work over 3-4 years alongside himself as the GM, making player personnel decisions.
Agreed.
So I like it a lot more than I liked Freddie Kitchens.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
Although you can't get that much worse than Freddie Kitchens.
He's got to be coming OC somewhere, right?
We'll see. I think it might be a year before we see him. It was just such a rough stretch for him. He took so much heat, so much media spotlight on him. It's going to be tough. Anyway, a game that the Browns can only dream that they were playing in this weekend. Some people thought they might, but unfortunately,
weren't you one of those people?
I thought they would make the playoffs and lose in the wild card round, but I was also dead wrong in the Browns.
Okay.
Anyway, we're going to do a little championship game previews, starting with the AFC Championship game. The underdog Tennessee Titans, who have been the magical story of the postseason thus far, will go play the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. Andy Reid will look to get his second shot at the Lombardi Trophy. Storm, do you think the Titans' magic can continue to roll, or will Kansas City be playing in Miami in February?
Yeah, I think we'll see Kansas City and Miami in February. I mean, look, the Titans have done incredible things. You go into New England, you knock off that dynasty, and then you go into Baltimore and you knock off the number one seed, the best, the MVP of the league. What they have done is very, very impressive. But I just don't see Kansas City losing this game. I feel like it's theirs for the taking. I feel like this is Andy Reid's shot. I mean, this is all about him right now. This is time for him to go get back into that big game. And then, listen, I know they played each other earlier, but you look at the end of that game, I mean, that was Patrick Mahomes' first game coming back from that dislocated kneecap, I believe it was. He threw a pick on his first pass attempt, second pass attempt. And then you just look at the snafu that happened at the end of the game with the botched field goal and then the fumble, and then that touchdown right away for Tennessee or whatever happened, that quick drive that they had. This defense is completely different than what they were. You saw it as soon as they kind of slowed. Like, once they got into a rhythm against Houston, I mean, they shut him down, and that's pretty impressive to shut down a Deshaun Watson and D. Hopkins. And then you look at, like, Tannehill really hasn't – he's played well. He's a great game manager in the last couple games. He's just riding off the coattails of what Derrick Henry's doing, and that's the key factor. I mean, it will continue to be that way.
Yeah, and you can't knock him because he's making the plays that need to be made. He's doing what the offense requires him to do. So
I mean, he has, 160 yards in 2 games?
Yeah, it's not great statistically, but I've been all about the Titans this postseason. That's so strange because usually for the past few seasons, I've hated the Tennessee Titans because all they serve to do is be a thorn in someone's side in the regular season, and they come up short of the postseason. Well,
Marcus Mariota.
This year, yep, that's the difference. It's Tannehill to Mariota. Just that little bit of a difference can allow you to be the thorn in someone's side in the postseason, and that results in a run like this. So I picked him to beat the Pats. I picked him to beat the Ravens, and I've been so impressed with what Mike Vrabel has been able to do with this team down the stretch of the season. With that being said, I'm with you. I think Kansas City goes off on Tennessee this week, and the fairy tale ends for the Tennessee Titans. So Derrick Henry's been a monster. There's no denying that. And that defense has been ferocious, but Kansas City just has too much talent. We'll start defensively. They were a terrible run-stopping defense early, and something happened with that team where they've now become, the best scoring defense in the past month and a half or so,
crazy,
allowing like 11 points a game.
It was probably right after that Tennessee game.
Yeah, now
a little bit after that, I guess.
I will say whether or not Chris Jones plays is going to be a big deal, but even if he doesn't, I don't think Kansas City will allow Derrick Henry to be a huge factor because I think they're going to come out guns a-blazing. I think Tennessee is going to have a difficult time scheming and planning for what Andy Reid comes up with in this week for those first 3 or 4 drives, try and get points quick. And that's going to force Ryan Tannehill to have to make more plays with his arm, and that's not the way Tennessee is going to win games. It's going to be similar. Tennessee is going to get pulled out of their game plan the same way that they pulled Baltimore out of their game plan.
Yep.
Kansas City is way too stacked, man. They just scored 7 straight touchdowns, now granted on a shoddy defense.
Right.
But
Kansas City, I mean, no matter what defense they play, they could score at will. I mean, when they're ready to score, they're going to score. And
Absolutely.
They could do it quick. They could do it slow. I mean, it's just incredible.
It's a good thing that they got to shake the dust off against the Texans instead of the Titans.
Yeah.
If they had to come off of a bye and they had 2-3 slow possessions against the Titans, it would have been game over.
I would show a little more concern for the Chiefs if they scratched and clawed and kind of battled that game against Houston to the end.
Yeah.
But it was by halftime. It was like,
just
okay,
showed
this
that they
is
had a
over.
really bad quarter where nothing went their way.
Yeah.
There were drops on the part of Kansas City. I know Kelsey had one.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes' first 2 third-down throws were dropped that they would have been first down.
Right.
So I don't think that happens again. And just as much as Tennessee has rallied around Mike Vrabel, I think Kansas City is aware of their head coach's track record, and they want to get him back to a Super Bowl because, man, if anyone in the NFL deserves to get one right now, I think it's Andy Reid. I've loved the job he's done as a head coach so far. Those of you who listen to the show know both Storm and I are huge fans of his. No surprise who we're both pulling for this weekend in that game.
Absolutely. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red. Anyway, last game of the weekend will be the NFC Championship. And actually, I don't know do you know when the games are played? I should.
It's like 3 and 6 or 3 or something like that. They're later.
Okay.
It's like 3 and 6:30, I think the second one kicks off. I forget.
Okay, good to know.
But I don't know which one's which. So
we'll figure it out by Sunday.
I would assume the NFC would be later
because it's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
That would be logical. Anyway, so Storm just alluded to it. The NFC Championship will be played out on the West Coast in San Francisco. Packers will be traveling there to take on the number 1 seed 49ers, and it should be a good one. I mean, Aaron Rodgers showed last week that he still has the arm that we have remembered him for from his MVP seasons, and although he doesn't put up the stats, can still make great plays. And San Fran showed us just how complete of a team they can be. So my question to you is, do you think Aaron Rodgers will be able to do enough to beat this stacked San Francisco squad, or is it going to be more of a repeat from the last time we saw these two teams meet?
I really don't think it's going to be a repeat, but I don't think Green Bay is going to get it done. And I picked Green Bay at our midseason review to get to the Super Bowl. But, man, just watching this San Fran team, like, they just came out again against Minnesota and just shut that team down. I mean, Dalvin Cook had 18 yards, I think it was. I mean, Diggs was quiet. Sherman, another interception for Sherman. That D-line just feasted. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going to be running for his life when Nick Bosa and crew are chasing him down. I just don't see how the Packers will be able to score in the 20s because I think that's where San Fran will be. You know what I mean? I don't see it. I mean, you look at Jacob Hollister, he had some good success against the Packers last week. Well, guess who's coming in as a tight
now you
end?
got George Kittle to deal with. You got a
exactly.
grown-ass man to deal with.
Right. I mean, it's there's some mismatches there for that Green Bay defense, and I know San Fran's going to execute. And, again, we talked about against Seattle. There's so many wrinkles in that offense. And
they
I don't think Green Bay has the
well
answer.
on both sides of the ball.
And like I said, Green Bay is going to have to probably score at least 24 points, and I just don't see that.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me because just as a fan, I would love for so much to see Patrick Mahomes versus Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl. The era moving out of like the type of quarterback we had never seen before to the era moving in. Kind of like, is it time to pass the torch, Aaron, or do you still have one left in you? And I will be rooting for the Packers because of that. Also for my cousin's husband, Reed Porter, huge Packers fan. So, I'm also rooting for you.
Josh's cousin is also Brendan. He's a Packers fan, I think.
So does that make us like third cousins, Packer fans or something like that?
Maybe,
I don't know. I don't know
if I go down the family tree, let's see here.
Exactly. Unfortunately, though, I just don't think it's going to happen. It's for a lot of the reasons that you just said. I mean, you look at both teams, and Green Bay has the quarterback edge, I believe. They have the number one running back edge and the number one wide receiver edge. But other than that, all across the field, whether it's backup running backs, whether it's offensive line, whether it's 2 through 4 wide receivers, tight end, front four on defense, the cornerbacks on defense, San Francisco has them beat, and I just don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to do enough. Now, what I will say is that I can't rule them out, number one, because I know if the game is close, Aaron Rodgers can make magic happen.
No doubt.
But number two, Jimmy Garoppolo has in the past showed a penchant to try to give the ball to the other team. He is not always mistake-free.
2 turnovers last week, or was it
I know
just
he
the
had
one?
at least one, another one that probably could have been a turnover. But he has a habit of making some careless decisions, and if Green Bay can capitalize on that, who knows what could happen. I just think that San Francisco is going to be able to bottle up Aaron Jones, who is such a huge component of Green Bay's offense, and they, like you said, are going to get after Aaron Rodgers. They have 5 first-rounders who play in rotation on that front four. Not to mention Richard Sherman is playing the best cornerback of his career, really, since he got injured.
Yeah, definitely since he got injured.
And then on offense, that run game is just ridiculous. They run the same play out of 6 different looks. So really, at its core, it's so simple, but defenses don't know how to get set for it. Shanahan has just done such a good job at designing that offense. I just think San Francisco, you see I'm blabbering on and on, they just have too many elements when for the Packers it's Aaron Rodgers and the Smith brothers on defense.
Right. And I mean,
obviously
you have
Devontae
Adams,
Aaron Jones, but
they're
going to double Devontae Adams, have Sherm lock up the other guy. And
I think you'll still have you mean Sherman on Adams?
Yeah, Sherm. Oh, no, I think it depends what side Adams is on as to whether Sherman guards him.
Yeah, I would think Sherman would stay on Adams for the most part.
I don't think he'll shadow him, no. He plays the left side of the field, man.
I mean, that other corner, who I can't remember their other corner, but I mean,
Quan
he
Williams,
plays
the nickel corner.
That's right. And then, we can get beat by Anthony Lazard or whatever the hell his
Lazard,
name is. Lazard and
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah, there's just not enough talent on that side of the ball for that for that defense to have issues.
Aaron Rodgers is the type of guy that should be able to overcome that. I don't want to make excuses because he does have and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams and Jimmy Graham a decent amount of talent. It just so happens that this San Francisco roster has a lot more. So
yeah, I was torn. I'm like, do I want to see lots of points in a Super Bowl? Do I want to see one of the best offenses versus one of the best defenses?
And that's the thing, because San Francisco is the better team, and I think they'll be the better matchup. But I'm just a sucker for seeing stars in big games.
Yeah,
and I know
Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes is definitely the for sure better storyline.
The coaching matchup will be better if it's San Francisco. See Reed versus Shanahan. It'll be strength versus strength with Kansas City's offense versus San Francisco's defense. And really, I guess there could be an upset, but I feel pretty confident in saying that I think both favorites are going to win this weekend.
Yeah, I would agree. Both home, both favorites.
Yeah.
I just think that's the way it's going to be.
And then we'll get a Kansas City, San Francisco Super Bowl, which is not what a lot of people were calling for earlier in the year. But I think, did we both have Kansas City in the Super Bowl?
We did.
You had them against Philly, though, early on.
And then I changed it to Green Bay.
Yeah. Should be fun.
We'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Should be fun. Just as much fun as recording this podcast was. How
As
do you like
always.
that for a transition to wrap
Wow.
it all up? I'm getting better at this stuff.
I appreciate the comment or the nice thing that you like hanging out with me and talking sports.
I do. At least I have to say that so that people think I'm having fun. People wouldn't listen if they thought
They
that
see
this
the
was a
smile
drag
on your face on the camera.
acting. Anyway, guys, we're going to wrap it up for this show. Thanks for tuning in and listening. We appreciate the support. As always, make sure to tell your friends and share our stuff on social media. If you like what we're doing, follow us on Facebook, the Practice Squad Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at TPS Pod. And check us out on YouTube if you prefer to watch the show and look at our bright, smiling faces as we're having a super fun and happy time on the mics. So, anyway, guys, have a great day, night, whenever you're listening. Enjoy your weekends, and we will be back to you with another episode this time next week.
Good night.